All right, I'm going to get started. My name is Georgia Haddad, and I'm a senior manager on our government affairs team at the Partnership for Public Service. For those of you who are not familiar with the partnership, we are a nonpartisan nonprofit working to build a better government and a stronger democracy. And we do that through a number of different programs, through our policy advocacy, our leadership development, our workforce programming, and convening leaders across organizations and sectors. And we've been working hard to provide information to support current and former feds. I can imagine some of you may have joined us before, and we're just deeply grateful for the work that each of you do and have done, and thank you for your service. Today's session will focus on career transitions for financial regulators, particularly in the examiner role. And though much of what we share today, I think, will be applicable for just those folks, most of it, I think, will be broadly applicable if you're joining, and that doesn't sound like who you are or what you focus on. So to get started, I wanted to share just a few notes before we dig in and introduce today's moderator. So throughout the webinar, you can feel free to submit questions through the Q&A function, I believe at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do the best to answer everything that we can. Please remember, if you would like your question to remain anonymous, that you click on that checkbox to say anonymous before you submit your question. And my colleague, Natalie, who will be with us throughout the webinar, will be joining us to help dig through those, jump on screen, perhaps to pull some through. And at the end, we'll make sure that we try to get to as many as we can. If we don't get to your question, or there's another topic that you'd like to learn more about and don't hear today, you can always let us know in the poll at the end or send us an email. We have FedSupport webinars all the time, and we're pulling through topics based on what we hear from you. So please feel free to go to our website and let us know, and we'll drop that in the chat. And also, you might find that we've already had a webinar on a topic that you want to hear, so feel free to search and scroll through everything on there. So with that, it's truly an honor to introduce you to today's moderator, Jean Koo, who leads internal communications at a federal financial regulator and has been a partner in advocating for and planning for the session. So Jean, over to you.
Thank you so much, Georgia. I want to just say welcome everyone this afternoon. Again, I am Jean Koo, and I am proud to have served over a decade in the federal government. With that said, I also wanted to make sure my ethics team wanted to remind me to say that I'm here in my personal capacity. May I also add, thank goodness for ethics teams. With that said, I wanted to thank the Partnership for Public Service for hosting us today. It might seem counterintuitive that they would sponsor a workshop that would seem to encourage people to maybe leave federal public service, but I hope if there's a takeaway from today, it's the idea that we all see federal service as less of a binary and more that we have skills that could be valuable elsewhere, and then what we learn from elsewhere could also strengthen our ability to serve in the federal government if and when we return. So just hopefully that will be some of the feeling that animates today. Our goal is to provide you with practical tips on navigating the current career and job market from the perspective of being within one of our federal financial regulators, and again with an emphasis on the examiner corps, because there have been a number of workshops already for federal service in general, and so we thought it might be useful to kind of zoom in on a couple of specific things that might be more applicable to a particular area of practice. So with that said, I'll turn it over to the panel to introduce themselves, starting with Chris.
Thank you, Jean. Yes, Chris Kelly. I am a senior partner with the firm of Smith & Wilkinson. We are a retained search firm and leadership consulting firm. I have worked to help build our financial services practice, which includes community banks, credit unions, and other financial services companies across the country, but primarily throughout the Northeast, down to the Mid-Atlantic, down to Florida. Our primary clients within our financial services practice include those institutions that are really between 500 million and 15 billion in total assets, so clearly a wide range, but they will retain us when they have VP, SVP, and C-level search initiatives. Lastly, we also have an insurance practice as well as a manufacturing distribution practice. And then lastly, we do provide leadership counseling, coaching, and development.
Great. Over to Neil.
Thanks, Gene. Neil Monahan. I'm the Deputy Administrator for Consumer Credit at the Colorado Attorney General's Office, also known as the Department of Law. I've been with the Department of Law for almost 16 years. I began as an examiner, spent about 5 years building up the debt management program, and then moved into more managerial roles, which ultimately led to the deputy administrator role 2 or 3 years ago. So on a day-to-day basis, I help run the unit. I'm responsible for regulatory strategy, and I'm a career public servant. So prior to my 16 years with the DOL, as you may notice from the accent, I'm originally from the UK, and I was working for a national agency in the UK, absolutely huge agency. When I left, there were 125,000 people working for them. This was HM Revenue and Customs. So I did anti-bootlegging roles, anti-smuggling roles, and then tax investigations for proceeds of crime. So I have gone from not an American federal agency, but a national agency in the UK, to working for a very small agency here. I mean, when I joined the DOL, there were less than 500 people in the entire agency, of which only 20 were in our consumer credit unit. So we have 20 people at that time regulating consumer credit for the entire state. We've since grown a little bit, but nowhere near the huge agency that I work for in the UK.
Thank you, Lisa Marie.
Hello. I'm a compliance program group manager at PNC Bank, where I lead a group of individuals in our first line of defense on advising compliance obligations for retail lending. In terms of my federal service, I was a presidential management fellow, and I joined the CFPB in 2011 as an examiner. I grew in my examiner role to a commissioned examiner and then a field manager.
Thank you, and Tony.
Thanks, Gene. Thanks, Georgia. Really appreciate the opportunity to join you all here today. My name is Tony Vasile. I'm Senior Vice President of Non-Bank Supervision and Enforcement at CSBS. That's the Conference of State Bank Supervisors. CSBS is a national organization representing financial regulators from all 50 states. Been with CSBS just over 10 years now. Prior to joining CSBS, I was a regulator in the state of Connecticut, and in both roles within Connecticut and here at CSBS, just had the opportunity to coordinate with federal agencies on a fairly regular basis, whether it was a mortgage fraud task force back in 2008, fast forwarded to 2014 when the states really ramped up their multi-state coordination, particularly on the non-bank side with the CFPB. So information sharing, coordinated exams, and so forth. So I've had the pleasure and opportunity to work with many folks in the federal system for a long time now. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you to the entire panel for joining us today. I want to start with this question that Neil, you already got a jump on, which is it'd be great if you could share some examples of successful career transitions from the federal government to other career paths. It doesn't have to be yours. It could be careers that you've seen other people, or past career paths you've seen other people go through. And I think it would be great to also share the breadth and variety of opportunities that are open to financial regulatory professionals. So I want to open up to for anyone who would like to share a couple of experiences you've observed or you've had yourself.
I can start. So I think I'm an example of someone that was able to successfully transition from federal service into the private sector. I joined PNC Bank in the first line of defense, and my current role is to advise the business on compliance obligations and risks. I think coming from that examiner role, you were looking at a proactive basis, or I guess reactive, identifying violations of law, offering corrective actions, collaborating with the banks. It's a similar role here. Again, I'm looking for potential areas of risks, concerns, hoping to prevent them before they happen, and working with the business on solutions. So it's sort of a seamless transition in terms of what you do as an examiner to working in compliance on the private sector.
I would concur with Lisa Marie. I've certainly seen over the last 15 or 16 years with the firm, folks that are former federal regulators that have moved into compliance and risk roles, but also on the finance side, where I've seen them, if they have a finance background, move into finance and eventually move to C-level positions, such as chief financial officer, chief compliance officer. So I've certainly seen that as a real life transition for those that have the appropriate background within community banking.
Yeah, and I'll just add that we've definitely seen the transition here within the state agencies, even here within CSBS. So as I mentioned earlier, CSBS is responsible for coordinating the states and their multi-state activities, but also coordinating with federal agencies. And so between CSBS staff and my members, the state regulators, built up some strong relationships over that time and built up a lot of trust there. So, but it's not only the trust that's there and is important. There's just so many areas where we have overlapping jurisdiction, and that the skills just translate so well to the things that we do in the state system as well. So, I've seen my members hire federal employees, and it's been a very easy, natural fit. And separately, just a couple of months ago, I had the opportunity to hire someone out of federal service who had a ton of experience in coordinating with the states, both on non-bank and bank related matters. So there are opportunities out there. So I'll just plug quickly, and I'm happy to share these links with Natalie after this session here. But CSBS has a careers page under the About tab of our website, where maybe some of you are familiar with that. But right now we have job postings from over 25 agencies, state agencies across the state system right now. So always happy to help make those connections, and if there's other resources that we can provide or questions that we can answer, happy to follow up on that as well.
So I would say, I mean, historically, obviously, I think most of the traffic has gone the other way. It's gone from the states to the feds, not least because the feds commonly, not always, but commonly pay more than the states. But we have seen, especially at attorney level, we have seen lots of backwards and forwards moving between the states and the feds, and then back from the feds to the states, and people thrive. But examiners too. I don't know many examples of examiners who have gone back to state regulation, but certainly the ones I do know have absolutely thrived. That everything's transferable. A lot of examiners left the states to go to the CFPB when it was set up, and it was seamless. They were bringing transferable skills. They were bringing the knowledge that they had, and there's no reason why they couldn't do that coming back to the states. And message I want to get across as well is that for anyone who did work for a state years ago, don't expect it to be as archaic as it used to be, as technophobe as it used to be. The states have developed. Our technology is better. Our systems are better. Many of the states are trying to model patterns and practices on the CFPB and other federal agencies. So I would hope that for people leaving the feds and rejoining the states, it really wouldn't be the culture shock that they might expect it to be.
So I'm hearing from this panel a lot about how the skills are transferable from federal service to either the private sector or public sector at the state or even local level. Can some of you get just like a little bit more specifics on like what kinds of skills you've seen be highly sought after or valuable in your lines of work? I'm particularly curious, Chris, for when you're recruiting and all of that, like what are some of the things you're looking for, so folks in this session can think about, okay, these are, I think sometimes people forget that they have these skills, right? Because you just breathe it every day. So, maybe just remind folks, hey, these are the kinds of things that people are looking for.
Yeah, sure, Neil. I think I'm sorry, Gene. I think to Neil's point, there are significant transferable skills that individuals have that can lend itself to any financial institution. I mentioned finance and moving into finance for a community bank, publicly traded community bank, and then becoming CFO. I worked with a director of the CFPB recently who just joined about a $1.5 billion publicly traded bank and is overseeing fraud for the organization. Another example would be on the credit union side. We have a client right now that would prefer to find a federal regulator or former regulator that also has a JD, has a law degree, and bring them on board as their general counsel. So those are like three specific examples that I would give where those transferable skills can certainly be relatable to a financial institution.
An obvious example for me would be interpretation of statutes. And I think sometimes people are reluctant to go from one particular statute to another because they fear having to learn something new, but they really shouldn't. If you can interpret one statute, you can interpret any of them. So if you are primarily focused at the moment on banking statutes, please do not be afraid to consider non-depository roles. It really is very, very similar. It's the same principles, and trying to find people with that experience of interpreting statutes at the state level can be very difficult. So you really do have an advantage. You have a competitive edge against other people who might be applying without any public service background for state government roles.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar, Neil. I mean, the experience with the consumer laws and regulations under Dodd-Frank is a big portion of what the states have authority to supervise and enforce for. So just state financial regulators, AGs, and so forth. So just having an understanding of those consumer laws will allow someone from the federal system to hit the ground running within a new supervisory program at the state level. So yeah, familiarity with those consumer laws is huge.
And just thinking about transferable knowledge and skills, I know most examiners hold a CRCM or commissioned, both of which are very highly respected in industry, and they have good oral communication. You're used to having difficult conversations with bankers, letting them know there's a violation of law. So there's a lot of those skills they don't realize you already have, and you're going to have difficult communications on the other side too.
That's all super helpful. Thank you so much for those observations. As announced up front, our audience is anonymous, so we're not 100% sure who all is here. But I think in my sense is there's a lot of people who might be fully employed right now. Some might be looking, and some might be quote unquote underemployed. So I'm curious, for that whole range of possibilities, what are some things that people can do right now to be active and visible in the field and stay sharp? So because of that range of possible audience here, like let's maybe talk about both work assignments, but then also maybe volunteering or gig work or contract opportunities that you might see out there for people to stay current with the current field.
I can start. I would say, in terms of staying sharp, just keep paying attention to the way the industry is evolving, whether that's paying attention as a consumer to new products that are on the line, whether that's paying attention to disciplinary actions that are made public, whether it's paying attention to all the different compliance information that's generated by law firms or states or federal agencies around the country. It's always, when we're recruiting, there are applicants who are seemingly just wanting a job, and there are applicants who clearly demonstrate a desire to be working as a financial regulator. So if you can show any understanding of what's currently going on, any understanding of latest trends or new products, emerging issues, that immediately elevates you above the competition.
I would agree with that, Neil. And what I would add, Gene, would be to stay sharp. Lisa Marie mentioned earlier CRCM certification. For those that may not be employed or underemployed that have the time right now to attain certain certifications like that. That is a great way to continue to advance your career and make you more attractive to prospective employers. In addition to that, it's really important to network as much as you can with those that you may be familiar with, that you may have a relationship with, or maybe those that you don't. Maybe you find somebody on LinkedIn that has a really unique background that you want to connect to. That's going to open you up. You connect to that person, that's going to open you up to that individual's connections, right? So networking is a big part of what we do on a day-to-day basis, because sometimes you don't know who one other person knows, right? But you're developing those relationships in the market that can help grow your network and just help you to be opportunistic about various opportunities that may come up in the marketplace.
Sorry to dive in, but I just wanted to echo that. That is absolutely a great recommendation, and reach out to your local states. So if you don't know who your local state regulator is, please feel free to just reach out to them and try and make those connections, whether that's LinkedIn or whether it's in person through phone calls. If you don't know who the key people are in your state, please connect with me on LinkedIn or contact me, and I can always try and connect you. I'm the immediate past president of the National Association of Consumer Credit Administrators, and the current president of the American Conference of Uniform Consumer Credit Code States. So I have a lot of contacts that I can connect people with. Please feel free to reach out. Sorry to be.
That's very generous. Thank you.
Yeah, just to maybe build on that, what Neil was saying there, on our CSPS website, we have a single page with all of our members listed, so it'll link to their state agency. So again, another link that I'm happy to share with Natalie following this event, just as a kind of a one-stop shop for all the state agencies in the system, or most state agencies. So we have members that are bank agencies, but we also have some non-bank agencies. So some states will have multiple agencies with different jurisdictions. So they'll but again, happy to help navigate that. You know, and I was gonna say something similar in terms of, you know, the best way to stay connected and stay sharp. Was, you know, one resource I'd point to is the CSBS newsroom, and I know I'm sending a lot of links related to the CSBS website, but if you take a look at what's being posted up in our newsroom, whether it's press releases, speeches, blogs, op-eds, and so forth, these are the conversations that my commissioners are having, and they're also reacting to things and conversations that are taking place within Congress. So that's a way to stay sharp in terms of what the relevant current topics are related to financial services and banking. And I'd say on top of that, there are just so many free resources out there at this time, whether it's webinars that law firms are hosting, law firms particularly that have financial service practices, and the newsletters, the daily newsletters, whether it's Politico's Morning Money or Axios. There's just so many free resources to stay on. I can't stay on top of all the free resources myself. So I'd really recommend staying there. And then another I guess plug would be around the CSBS LinkedIn page. So there's a lot of events that CSBS attends and speaks at. So getting familiar with what events our commissioners are at and what they would like to talk about and engage with is also big in terms of staying sharp.
So, Jean, this does not directly answer your question, but one of the first things I did was I contacted my career services from my alma mater, my college, and I said, "Hey, my federal resume is very different than what you expect in the private sector. Can you help me fix it? Look at it." So I worked with someone there. We did a lot of interview prep. If I saw a job listing I thought was interesting, I sent it over and I said, "Hey, do you know anybody here that can maybe take a look or connect with me?" So not necessarily looking at different certifications, but doing that sort of background work to get my resume to the top.
That's awesome. Yeah, having like a job coach or a career coach can be super helpful, especially if they're free.
You know, can I add to that a little bit?
Yeah.
I think it would behoove anyone to look for other retained search firms in the country that have relationships within the industries that they serve, and develop a relationship with that firm, whether it's an individual recruiter or the firm itself. Make those kind of connections as well, because when that firm is in fact retained on something that could be of interest, they have that person in their database and will very likely reach out to them proactively. So I think it's always a good idea to develop those, include retain recruiters in your network and develop that network.
All right, I'm gonna pull in this question from chat from the audience, which is from somebody who's I think is interested in transitioning into the financial industry. They are an IT security specialist focused on compliance and risk management, and I think this question is broadly about whether they should kind of really zoom in on the financial literacy skills or basically target positions focused on financial technologies as fintech or AI or blockchain. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of if you're making a transition and you're kind of in a more of a, let's say, a tech specialty or an area that isn't like in this compliance and examiner role that we've been talking about, whether you have any thoughts on whether you want to how you guys should pick up some of those skills to show you're excited and relevant to the financial sector?
I think technology is one of those disciplines that has so many transferable skill sets. Regardless of the industry, whether it's manufacturing or banking or consumer services or government services, the core technical skill sets are very transferable. And I found many that have moved from private industries into or other industries not related to financial services at a high level within technology and have done so very successfully. You can pick up the banking and the financial acumen and some of the IT compliance related issues that you need to be aware of. But if you have good core technical skill sets, those are certainly transferable.
I'm just going to throw this out there because it's just hard to avoid. Like people are constantly talking about the same things, right? Like how is AI going to change everything? Will you have any thoughts on because we were just talking about staying on the cutting edge. Do you have any thoughts on first of all, is AI going to just wipe out every single job in this room? Probably not. But then two, like assuming not, then what are some things that people can do to stay sharp in that regard?
I can start here. I think I'd actually maybe kind of flip it around, take a different view of this angle. I think the IT cybersecurity skill set is in very high demand, particularly in the supervision space. We've been researching, just for example, how the largest non-bank mortgage lenders are using AI in their processes right now, and they all are. Not eliminating humans in the underwriting and processing portion of the operation, but certainly integrating as much as they possibly can to keep headcount down. So, as regulators, we're constantly thinking about, well, how do we effectively supervise? And there will be the same volume of activities supervised. It might not just be individuals. We're talking individuals and technology. So I would really promote the IT technical aspects of your background, just because I think it's just going to be very in vogue, very in high demand for our supervisory process as we evolve going forward.
And just to add to that, for anyone in the room who isn't an IT expert, who is an examiner who doesn't have a strong IT background, don't be afraid about this. This is going to give you more opportunities for compliance investigations, because AI is going to be the subject of the compliance activity that you would do. So you don't need to be a IT specialist to look for possible risks with someone utilizing AI. It's the same risk that you've looked at before. It's just a computer making the decisions now rather than the individual.
That's very hopeful. Thank you, Neil. And that's also a reminder to our audience, if you have questions, to please feel free to add them to the Q&A. We do have not a question, but a request for Chris, if you can just check your mic to make sure that it's picking up at maximum volume, because it seems like it's a little muffled or quiet. And I know you've got that boom thing, so I figure it should actually be extra loud, but... Oh, actually, you just got quieter. I think you're now muted.
We can't hear you, Chris, if you're... Maybe
I don't
give
know
it
if
one more try.
maybe our battery is running out. I don't know. Why don't I tee up the next question, Chris, while you take a look at that mic. Hopefully this one is a relatively easy, quick one. But I have certainly heard people be worried about the possibility that employers might have a negative view of federal employees, and maybe financial regulators in particular right now. I'm curious about your perspective, and if you have any suggestions or advice about how job seekers can position themselves to avoid any negativity that might be out there.
I can begin with some good news that from the state's perspective, I don't believe there is any negative perspective about federal employees. I think states are in admiration of federal employees, especially of what's been going on in the last year. So I would, if you are considering a transition to a state agency, I would not worry about negative views about you whatsoever. So nice, short, but hopefully very optimistic statement there.
I agree. I've only heard positive things about regulators. I think it's a well-respected profession.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar. I mean, I just want to acknowledge, yeah, there's negativity out there, and from our state system side of things, there is no negative perceptions there, and we just understand the amount of change that federal employees are going through right now. So definitely want to acknowledge that. One thing that I point to, even if there's disagreements or kind of uncertainty around how someone will be perceived. I mean, just looking at the mission statements of the federal agencies and at the state level, we have very similar goals and ambitions, right? Around safety and soundness, economic development, broad credit availability, and consumer protection. And so there's a lot of alignment there, particularly with the state system. So, I understand there's difficulty, but I'll also add that, just from the industry side of things, and what we hear from industry representatives is that they're not looking for a ton of change in terms of managing their compliance responsibilities. And some of these industry associations have been very public about this. They prefer to not see drastic changes at the federal level, just because they've spent millions of dollars trying to comply with these rules. So the change is coming fast, but I think not just within the state system. I think industry has been pretty vocal about this as well. So, to the extent you can lean on shared missions and goals, I would do that to maybe push back on some of the negativity.
What about culture? Because I'm curious about, especially moving into a for-profit environment, whether there's concerns that, hey, you're all, even if you're hardworking, et cetera, you're just coming from a different perspective, and we're, trying to maximize profit, and you all are trying to maximize regulations. Just to stereotype it for a second, is that something that you see or have heard about in terms of concerns about cultural adjustment to a different kind of orientation or environment? And I don't know, Chris, if you're back online, maybe from a recruiter's perspective, whether you've heard that in conversations with clients.
Yeah, is this better, Gene?
It's great.
Great. I have heard that. Although it's very mixed across financial institutions. What I find most clients are looking for individuals that can collaborate across the enterprise, that can collaborate across other lines of business, and not necessarily be, a police officer that is going to, look at saying no versus saying or find instead of seeing a way to find a yes, right? So it's about collaboration, I think, across the organization. And I think if an individual can demonstrate that effectively, less worry about that, that potential perception that may be out there.
That's great. And I think one hopeful thing I'm hearing here is that, there might be some global generic discourse that's out there, but what really matters is what's happening specifically in not just your sector, but the actual people you're talking to, right? So don't start with stereotypes, don't start with the global conversation. It's actually very, very specific to what you're looking for. So I think that's super helpful. Thank you for that. So I think one of you already broke this open. I think it was Neil again broke this open previously when we were talking about sharpening your skills. But let's talk about networking for a little bit, because we've heard this certainly from a lot of career coaches, is that, probably better than pulling up a LinkedIn job posting and just throwing your resume in like 1,000 other people. It's probably a lot more effective to start with the people you know and work through people. And so we keep hearing that that's key to navigating career transitions. So I'm curious what practical actions you recommend people take to strengthen their networks during this time of transition. Um, and I'm looking for especially two things. One is something that people can do literally as soon as we get off of this call, like people can just do it right now, and not something that they're going to put off till next year, which isn't that far away, but still. And the other thing is, especially for folks who feel that they have a small network or an outdated network, like they haven't really, quote unquote, done networking for a decade now or whatever, because that's how long they've been in their job, and they feel like, hey, I don't even know anybody anymore, or I don't know anybody in this field outside of my immediate work area. Do you have any very actionable advice for people, things that people can do right now, especially if they feel like, hey, I don't actually know anybody?
I'm happy to begin. I've already mentioned reaching out to your states, but for examiners, one thing you can do is reach out to people that you've examined. I mean, you may feel as though your network is small, but your network isn't small because you've been examining people. They know you through your examination work. You know them through your examination work of that company. So for the company, I mean, obviously there's a range of companies out there, and you may not feel comfortable working for entities that have really kind of tried to skirt regulatory. Yeah, you may feel more happy with companies that are wanting to comply, and that's very sensible. But yeah, reach out to them, see what they can offer, see if they have any leads, see if they have. Their dealings with you mean that they can actually speak on your behalf to their networks. I'm not explaining that very well, and I apologize, but I just wanted to throw that out as something that, in addition to a very closed network of regulators, is reaching out to the industry as well.
Yeah, I think Neil has a good point, because they saw you work, right? They collaborated with you. So that was already sort of a test run there. And like I mentioned earlier, reaching out to career services at your former college. They helped me network. I reached out to friends that I haven't spoken to in 8 years, and they were happy to help. People want to help. I think they know what's going on, and genuinely, people want to help each other.
Networking it's not easy, and I think you have to have some level of courage to put yourself out there, and particularly with folks that you may not be familiar with. I'll give you a real life example. This former regional director identified he wanted to go back into banking. He identified about a dozen institutions that were within a commutable distance of where he lived because relocation was not available to him. And he directly reached out to those institutions, email first, phone call second, asked if they were available for a cup of coffee. He'd be open to a cup of coffee, even if an opportunity wasn't available at that time. But he understood that I want to develop relationships with those that are in my market, as uncomfortable as it might be. That's how I'm going to establish myself in the marketplace and be visible to those where I think I can bring the most value to.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I mentioned earlier about the CSPS careers page and all the agencies that have their jobs posted there. I would actually encourage folks to take a look at the agencies that don't have job postings as well. And within the state agency websites that we have, there's a lot of transparency and there's a lot of contact information down to at the individual staff level. So, if there's interest, and the beautiful part about the state system is we have members in every state. So if relocation issues are, that's a challenge. And I'd still encourage you to visit a particular state's website, reach out to a contact available on the website, even share your resume. You're interested in the agency's work. I feel if you get your information into the agency even before a job posting is available, that's just a helpful thing. So very, very much strongly encourage you to take a look at all the agencies. Again, we have a single page on the CSPS website that has all of the banking agencies' websites and titles and locations and so forth. So again, happy to share that resource so that it's a kind of a one-stop shop for you.
I want to go ahead, Neil.
Sorry, just to echo what Tony said, that's a really good point about approaching the states who don't have current vacancies listed. The elephant in the room is that lots of states currently have deficits. They aren't recruiting. They have hiring freezes. That won't last forever. So even if you're not seeing anything now, please do reach out to those states. Get your name out there. Obviously, the vast majority of state roles are open competition, so no one can reserve a job for you, but they'll have you in mind and they'll be able to reach out and just let you know when vacancies do eventually arise again. As Tony says, CSPS has a list of lots of agencies. I don't know if they have every agency on there. I mean, for example, my agency isn't a CSPS member, and there are a few others who aren't. So I don't know if that page is all inclusive, but please feel free to reach out for me if you don't see an agency on there and you don't have a contact for that agency. I can almost certainly put you in touch with someone.
I wanted to tie together some of the threads I'm hearing here, which is what I've understood is by the time jobs hit the market, it's already kind of late to be trying to get into that job, right? Like you kind of want to have these relationships as early as possible. So going back to the idea of networking, it might feel more comfortable to folks if you think about what you're doing, not as like asking for a job, but learning about the industry and learning about the sector, right? You're trying to educate yourself about, hey, what's going on, what's on the cutting edge, what's on people's minds, et cetera, so that you have that relationship and that you're learning about opportunities before they're hitting the market, as you're all saying. So that's certainly advice I've heard. I don't know if anybody have any perspective on that. It sounds like that meshes with what you're all saying. But that might make it more comfortable for folks if you feel like it's a little smarmy to call people up and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." That's probably not the approach to take, right? Like you're actually networking, you're learning.
I agree with that, Gene, 100%. And what the industry that I cater to, the community bank and credit union industry, is some of the challenges are their senior leadership will continue to see retirements really just flood the market. There really is a dearth of younger talent coming into those institutions. So if any individuals here are mid-career or younger in their career, there are opportunities that are going to arise due to the continuing epidemic of retirements. So it's something to consider.
Actually, so I'm going to jump on that because there's a question in the Q&A, which is, what advice do you have for someone who's still somewhat early on their, in this case, legal career, but any kind of career, who's looking to transition? And I know that, for example, at our agency, we had semi-internship positions where you get a couple of years of experience and then you'd move on. So let's say you only have a couple of years of exposure. Do you have different advice for folks who are in that position?
What I've seen in the marketplace for those that are younger in their career, contract work tends to be attractive and can be lucrative. At the same time, can build a resume and work history. So that would be something I would consider for those that are younger in their career.
And that'd be direct contract work, or working with working for a contractor?
Direct contract work. So any given company, bring an individual on board, let's say for a 6-month contract. And based on the term, that person may be eligible to become a full-time employee at the end of the 6 months, right? Or they continue to look for another 6-month contract. It can be, like I said, it can be lucrative. It can also be professionally challenging as well, because you're gaining additional experiences. So that could be another area to consider.
So this is just my ignorance. Where do you find those kinds of roles?
Typically in my industry, in the banking and credit union industry, it is typically at larger institutions where they don't want to bring somebody on board full time. So, of course, Lisa Marie is at PNC. PNC is a huge institution, right? So, Bank of America, Chase, those are the larger, money-centered banks that are likely to be more open to bringing on contract work versus full-time work.
Thanks. I hope that's helpful. Any other thoughts on this?
Just from the state perspective, any federal employee who's relatively junior, who doesn't have a lot of experience, that is not an obstacle whatsoever. You already have the transferable skills. You've been interpreting statutes, you've been making those financial calculations if you're an examiner. So you have that background. Whether you've been doing it for 1 year or 15 years, you have that background. But the other thing is that you've demonstrated a commitment to public service already, and that's so important for the states. So I would always stress that in your applications, stress that in your cover letters. As much as we're looking for someone who has skills, we're looking for someone who really does want to be serving the public.
All right, this one is a question I think mostly directed at Tony. Can CSBS speak to your recently announced tech sprints with MISMO? Sounds like a great way to find state and other contacts with innovative organizations.
Sure, happy to. could spend a whole webinar on this one, but so MISMO is the Mortgage Industry Standards Maintenance Organization. It is a standard setting organization under the Mortgage Bankers Association. There's an initiative underway to standardize mortgage compliance data, so down to the loan level, so that transaction testing through software applications can take place more seamlessly. In the past, we've had challenges related to collecting complete and accurate data and so forth. So working collaboratively with industry, loan origination software providers, doc preparers, we've had all these folks at the table coming up with a common data standard so that we can better have a more efficient and effective compliance process within the mortgage supervision landscape. It's just the most time-consuming piece of the consumer compliance related reviews of within a mortgage exam. So working on a data standard to get that right. What we're doing now is launching the data standard, leading us up to a tech sprint at our upcoming NMLS conference in February in Orlando. So we're excited to showcase that this new data standard can work and that vendors are ready to produce meaningful compliance results from their software applications.
So I'm not familiar with how all these different kinds of tech sprints work, but is that the kind of thing that is open for people to participate in, or is it a closed forum?
So the conference itself is our annual NMLS conference. There's a registration fee. Happy to share that information as well, along with the other links. But there are other ways to track this information. So I would recommend going to the MISMO website, and this is if you bear with me, it's the Mortgage Compliance Dataset Working Group. So MCD Working Group will have all the background information and some publicly available materials to take a look at. There is a membership fee to join MISMO as well, but there's definitely free information that you can get without becoming a full member of MISMO.
Actually, let me pause, and Georgia, if you want to put the survey up for folks, and then we'll go back to questions.
Yeah, fantastic. A survey is going to pop up right now on your screen. We've been collecting ideas since we started our FedSupport resources earlier this year, but just a few short questions to understand how effective this session was, and then get any ideas from you for ideas or ways to run sessions in the future to make sure that they're still effective and helpful to you. While you're filling that out, which we sincerely appreciate you taking a moment to do, Chris, a question for you to build on some of what you said. Any direct tips for how to make yourself known to a headhunter or recruiter? Is that something that you can signal on LinkedIn, direct outreach? Do you kind of have to wait for someone to come to you? Any tips there? I know this question comes up in a lot of our sessions, and I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think LinkedIn is a great resource, of course. I think based on the region that you're in, I would recommend a firm that has either a regional or a national reach, based on any individual's intent to stay where they are, or if they are interested in relocating. But it really comes down to direct contact, quite honestly. Again, whether that's LinkedIn, sending an email or in-mail via LinkedIn, or identifying firms via the web that you can reach out to. Typically, folks will reach out to me directly. We start with email, and I always want to talk to interesting people and folks that have unique and great backgrounds, because what most people don't understand is recruiters want to develop relationships with both individuals as well as our clients, right? Because it's our job to understand what the talent market is all about in any given region. So, but to answer your question, best way to do that is direct outreach via LinkedIn or email, and follow up with a phone call. I think it's rare that anyone will find if a good recruiter that won't return the communication,
Mm.
and want to develop, that relationship.
That's super encouraging. Thank you. Tony, now that sorry, going back one question, Tony, since you mentioned the upcoming MISMO conference, are there any other places or conferences, conventions, etc., workshops, whatever, that you might encourage people to attend, go to, organizations to join, things like that, where people can also meet a lot of people all at once?
Sure. In the non-bank space, in particular, there are several sister associations to CSBS that host annual conferences and training events and so forth. With us hosting state regulators and folks in government, we we certainly try to keep costs to an absolute minimum for folks. So, and O'Neill has experience running some of those conferences himself. So it's a great opportunity to network. And so it's not just regulators getting together, it's regulators and industry getting together at those conferences. So on top of CSBS events, our sister associations, there's a mortgage association, ARMOR, the American Association of Residential Mortgage Regulators, mouthful. And then we have a money transmitter MSB regulator association. So the money transmitter regulator association is MTRA. And so, yeah, I'll again, more resources I can share afterwards so that folks can maybe get connected to those association websites as well. So I won't go through the alphabet soup.
Like I say, we're all used to alphabet soup. Go ahead.
I can certainly share NACA's website now. That's the National Association of Consumer Credit Administrators. It's naccaonline.org. We have a conference coming up in June in Richmond, Virginia, which is open to, I believe it's open to current federal regulators as well as state regulators. But if you are no longer with the feds by that point, it probably wouldn't be open to you other than a small amount of sessions. So, but you can always, there's the email address for NACA is on that website, and you can liaise with our executive director and see what options are available for joining that conference in June.
We only have a handful of minutes left. I've got one question here, which I don't think we can address in 3 minutes, but we can at least start, which is for folks who are in their 50s or 60s and might be concerned about age discrimination. I just turned 50 myself. Any specific tips for folks there?
If I would like to start, and I'm not kidding when I say we have someone in my agency who is 80 years old. He doesn't look it, and I was surprised when I found that out. But no, certainly from my perspective, there is no age discrimination going on in my agency, and I'm unaware of it in any other state agency. We value experience. If people want to work and they're looking for work and they have experience and they can offer something, that's what we're looking for.
I would echo that from Neil, Gene. My clients are looking for, at the end of the day, experience. They're looking for talents, and if that comes from a 50-year-old man or woman, it doesn't matter whether it comes from a 50-year-old or a 40-year-old. At the end of the day, it's about what the value that any given individual can bring to the organization.
All right, we're at our last minute here, and I'm just wondering if everyone has like one thing that people should do when they get off this call, if they're serious about doing career exploration, if there's like one takeaway, one action they should do right away.
Beef up the cover letters. When you do apply, really tailor your cover letter. That's so important. And please, please, please stress your commitment to public service and your public service background in that cover letter.
I'll jump in and just say I would stay to our earlier question, sharp on the current issues and what regulators are focusing on, and tailor, as Neil said, tailor your cover letters to those type of issues. Because I can tell you that our state regulators are looking at them and figuring out what's next.
Gene, I would add, find a recruiter that you can develop a relationship with, and that person being someone in the market, working in the market, in the industry that they currently work in, and within the region that they live in or want to live in. Develop those kind of relationships as well, as many as possible.
Lisa Marie, it looks like you have the last word.
Oh, great. Yeah, reach out to your network. People want to help each other, so don't be afraid.
Thank you all so much for your generous time. I hope folks here learned something. I want to thank again the Partnership for Public Service for hosting us today. Good luck to everyone, and thank you all for your service.
Thank you again, Jean. Thank you, our wonderful panelists. And if you'd like to watch this session after the fact, or perhaps see some of the other sessions we've had, some of the FAQs that are up on our site and or blogs that we've written, please check out FedSupport and feel free to reach out if there's something that you'd like to see that you haven't seen yet. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon. Thank you for spending your time with us.